Pete Barbutti, ladies and gentlemen. Get all mixed up.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first part of our first show here in our cozy little Slate Brothers Club. What I'd like to do for you now, really an exciting number, ladies and gentlemen. We got a request from a guy who comes in here, really. And every night he comes in, he sees the cordine up here. He says, hey, man, do something wild on the cordine. You know, they sees her there. How many of you lived in a city where you saw this scene happen every day of the time that you were living there? There's a cordine school in downtown run by a Jewish guy who used an Italian name and horn-rimmed glasses. And he sells cordines and gives lessons. But he knows in the back of his mind that he makes his real bread selling cordines. So the father and the son walk in, they mill around, and the father finally goes up to him and says, hey, professor, how much do I got to tie up to get the kid going? And the professor says, well, your son can learn to play on this $14 accordion. 14 brogues for a cordine. Could my kid play one like that? Professor says, are you kidding? And picks up the $14 accordion and plays. Well, they buy the accordion, and a year later, the kid comes back playing. And the father says, what's wrong? My kid's not doing too good. And the professor says, well, he's a little limited because of that instrument. If he had this $300 accordion, he says, 300 swords for a cordine? Me, my kid could play one like that? And the professor says, are you kidding? And picks it up and plays. They buy the accordion, a year later, the kid comes back playing. And the father says to the professor, what's wrong? My kid doesn't have it or what? I mean, he don't got the thing. I mean, he doesn't play, man. He spent 300 swords. Well, the professor says, well, he's lost his incentive, his initiative. If he had this $1,500 accordion, 1,500 hogs for a cordine! Who could play one like that? And the professor says, are you kidding? And picks it up and plays. And the funny part, the only song professor ever learned was, you know, the professor can't even play. Yeah, so now the father and the son, they open a school down the street to teach professors. How many times has this happened to you? Really? When you go to a cleaner's, you take in a tailor-made suit, you take it into the cleaner, and you say, do a good job, will you? And you tell him little things like, roll the lapel or do something with the cuff or something. And the guy brings it back, and there's a little white hanky sticking up in there. And you pull the white hanky out, and there's a big sign on it. It says Harvey's Cleaners and Laundry. It's got pictures of Harvey's Cleaners and his car out there, and his kid sitting in the car, and his dog, and a big sign and palm trees and everything. And big words there. It says pick up on delivery and phone numbers and addresses. It takes a little class away, you know. You ever do it in public, do that, and people say, look at him, he's one of Harvey's boys. Swear. One time I like to go into Harvey's and talk about the cleaning and have this here and pull it out and blow my nose on his ad. Really bug him, because it's embarrassing if it ever happens to you. Has that ever happened to you, sir? Sir, has that ever happened to you? Has anything ever happened to you, sir? Come on, man, move around a little bit. People are staring. I got to tell you briefly a little story that really happened on a trip into Las Vegas. If you ever had the pleasure of making the trip, I have to tell you, before I made the trip, quite naturally, I was concerned with all of the scheduled departures, so I called all the major carriers in the area. Then I called some airlines, and I learned this too. When you talk to the airlines, some of the big airlines, as large as they are, seemingly, they still have little subversive edges to increase their business. Now, here's one maybe you've noticed. United, a marvelous airlines, they still have these telephone receptionists with the very appealing voices. Ever happen you dial United, and a voice comes in and says, United Airlines. Well, you're ready to fly with her, right there. You don't care where she's going. So I said, hello there, I'd like to go to Las Vegas. And she said, say it again. I climbed down from the wall. I said, honey, tell me what time the plane leaves. Well, she checked the data, and she said, hey, Dada. She checked the data, and she came back, and she said, that's flight 678. Departure's at 4:10 in the morning. I said, thank you very much. And the fare? $18.02 plus tax. I said, thank you very much. And she thanked me in the usual manner, saying, thank you for calling United. I said, kidding, I'm calling from a booth. Anyway, I said to myself, I'm going to check. So I dialed the number, and a voice came in and said, yeah. I said, airlines? It must be our calendars here. I said, well, I'd like very much to go to Las Vegas. A big deal. So what do you mean by that? Well, we got a lot of our pilots trying to make it that far. I'll get to you a little bit. So I said to the guy, now, I don't want to hear any of that. I said, just tell me what time the plane leaves. So he checked the data. I said, hey, data. Same cat. He came back and he said, that's flight number 1. I said, number 1? He said, that's right. Departure is Thursday or Friday. I said, can you narrow it down? Then I got bugged. He said, look, kid, get out to the airport early Thursday morning. You see one of ours. Looks like it's going to get off. Get on. I said, how much is the fare? He said, how much have you got? Anyway, I went out to the runway, climbed aboard one of their Ford Trimotors, and down the runway we went, faster and faster and faster, and then slower and slower and slower. About an hour later, we rested her and gave her another shot, and this time it rose gracefully from the earth, and we pierced the blue yonder, divorced of all earthly contact, higher and higher and higher, and this was good. I mean, we were doing good because we got around Barstow, and a couple of the trees were below us. 2.5, scratchy. I was really shook, and I saw the stewardess coming up the aisle with a bottle of champagne. The first thing I figured, first class. Halfway up the aisle, she uncorked the bottle and began drinking it. So what are you celebrating? And she looked me right in the eye and said, we're off the ground! Now, if that won't make you nervous, huh? Well, as nervous as I was, I tried to settle down, and then the pilot showed up with a parachute on. So what's that for? I said, now, please don't be alarmed. I'm going for help. I said, that sounds all right for you, but what are we going to do with the rest of the passengers? And then he told me, and I said, do you think we have time? We take musicians all entertain. I think everyone takes a real vicious pride in their work, but no one like musicians. I'll give you an example of how these scenes happen. This has happened so many times. A layman, a person from the street, let's say a mechanic, wants to come into a nightclub, you know? And when these people want to come into a nightclub, they want everybody to think like that they're hippies, you know? So they spend 2 or 3 weeks getting cleaned up for this one night because, you know, they have a big grease problem, mechanics. So they get all cleaned up and dressed up, a real hip suit and everything, and they'll come in and sit right next to the stage, you know? And they'll sit there all night like this. You know, and right away we think they're a musician or something, so you start playing a little better, you know. And then in the middle of the show, the guy will lean forward and say, hey, man, play Lullaby of Birdland. You know, like that's sort of a hip song. So right away, but we feel a little sense, a little something that maybe he's not a musician, so we fire a test question at him, you know, like, what key, man? You know, and right away he'll cop out like say, I'm a mechanic, man, let me alone. You know, and you get real nervous. You shatter them. I mean, yeah, I'll give you an example of how it works in reverse. Everything. Now, here's what really happened to me once. I had a little car, a 1957 Chevrolet, and I was fixing it myself. Mechanics hate to think you fix your own car. It's terrible. It's sacrilege. But I needed, some of you people, I know some of you guys are probably familiar with the part, I needed a set of valve cover gaskets. Now, I looked it up in that big book, which cost me $9, and I found out the name of the part, right? Now, right out front, 40 cents I bought grease to put all over me and it looked dirty. $3.50 for dirty overalls and mechanics, second-hand overalls. Now, I rehearsed this dialogue till it was spotless, and I went up to the Chevrolet dealer. Now, I don't walk in like a greenhorn and say, where is the parts department? Because then it's a cop-out. So I walk in. First thing I do, I spit. Now, right there, I'm inside, right? I spit. I say to the girl there, I say, where's parts? Now, is that hip? I tell you, where's parts? And the little girl said, it's down there, man. So I went down to the parts department, right? I spit again, and I fondled the calendars, and I played with the broken radio with the scotch tape on the speaker. I made every scene, you know. And the parts man said to me, he said, help you, kid? And I spit a couple more times, and I cursed 8 or 9 times. And I went over, and I looked at the GMC new engines coming out. I looked at this, and I said, yeah, and I touched it and everything. So I went over to the parts man. I said, sort of like, you know, I said, let me have a set of valve cover gaskets for 57 Chev V8. So he must have sent something, because he said to me, is that the one with the hydraulic lifters? Hydraulic lifters. It sounds like lingerie. I don't know what the guys thought. You know, I said, don't fool around, man. I'm a musician. Yeah. There was a whole bunch of guys who, the way they sing, like, didn't have anything to do with the lyrics. Remember those guys who sing songs like this, like, I'm so sad I can almost cry and die, baby, over you. My heart's bleeding and I think I'll kill myself. Never felt more like a crying these blues, yeah. I'm so sad my baby's gone away. Everybody's dead and I can almost die. Yeah. A lot of those guys around. Yeah. And the real hippie singers who sang just the opposite, like they'd sing songs like, Man, I'm the happiest man in the world. I'm going to shout it from the rooftops. I'm bursting with excitement over you. I'd like to do a little number now which deals with another element of music, ladies and gentlemen, the era of the singer. Now, as you know, during a period of years, so many great types of singers have come along, and we'd like to do just a couple little numbers here which sort of runs through the whole gauntlet of all the different types of singers very quickly, so it'll give you a chance to maybe bring back some very fond memories. Now, the first type singer is a guy who always sang standard songs years ago, but he always treated every song with his own inevitable style. And he used to do songs, good songs like You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You. Ladies and gentlemen, You're Nobody Till Somebody Loves You, in the inevitable style of some of the great old singers. Here we go, orchestra. Well, you're nobody, N-O-B-O-D-Y, until somebody loves you, Y-O-U. I said you're nobody, N-O-B-D-Y, till somebody cares, C-A-R-E-S. Well, now you're nobody, N-O-B-O-D-Y. You're nobody, N-O-B-O-D-Y, till somebody loves you, Y-O-U. C-O-U-G-H. Find yourself a body to love. You remember those guys, right? All right, whatever happened to these guys? I always used to come into nightclubs like two guys, bricklayer or something. They sit at the front table for about half the night, and they get half juiced up, and the one guy looks up at the MC and says, my buddy wants to sing. And the MC says, well, we don't allow singing here, sir. I said, my buddy's going to sing. And the guy says, well, for our first guest artist, we have this fine gentleman down here, Ralph, who's going to come up and sing a song. So Ralph comes up, and he goes over to the piano player, half juiced, and he says to the piano player, I'm going to sing Don't Take Your Love From Me. And the piano player says, well, what key do you do it in, sir? And the guy says, any key. And the piano player says, well, gee, you got to have a key. Any key. So the piano player runs up on arpeggio, and the guy comes in like that. Tear a star from out the sky, and the sky feels blue. Tear a petal from a rose, and the rose weeps too. All this your love won't do. And they both gang up on the piano player and kill him. Did you ever see that happen, sir? Did you ever see anything happen? Come on, move out, buddy. Hey, wait, here's another type singer that I'm sure you've seen this happen a number of times. There's a vocal group, right? Here's a guy had sung with the four Goopus, the four Chim Chims, the three Brother Roonies. The guy sang with every vocal group in the country. Finally, he breaks away, and he goes out on his own. And he comes into a nightclub, he sits down, and the guy says, and now we're going to hear from that great man, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pete Johnson, who's been singing with all the great vocal groups in the country. And here's Pete up now, just broke away. He's going to do the great hit that the group made famous, entitled Tenderly. The evening breeze caress the trees. Ooh, ooh, tenderly we oh, oh. See the humor there, sir? He never learned the melody, just sang the harmony part with all the groups. Wish we had some flashcards to help you a lot, but we don't have them. There's another great type singer who was always around, the Western singer who spent so much time selling the song. He wasn't too particular about the way the song was originally written, and he used to do great songs like Red River Valley. He used to do them just like this. From this valley, they say, you are leaving. We will miss your bright eyes and sweet smile. Just remember